Are you tired of trying to be happy? Do you want to move beyond the same old story in your life? My next guest, Owen McCabe, is one of Ireland's first life coaches. He's created a program called Open for people who are ready to live life from their hearts.
You may not realize this, but every day in your life, with every decision you make a choice. Do you make that decision from your head, or do you make that decision from your heart? Well, my next guest is one of Ireland's first life coaches. His name is Owen Mccabe, and he's come all the way here to be on the show. Owen, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here, Kristen.
So let's talk about this choice that we make. What does that mean?
Well, very simply, it's something that's available to us at any moment of any day, whereby we can choose to be meeting what's happening from our mind or from our head or from our heart. So, of course, we need to be aware of what's happening in the moment, but in that moment, that's the choice. And ultimately, that's the most important choice we have, is to be in one or the other. You can't be, I suppose out of habit, most people tend to be in their head. They tend to be mind-centered. And so that makes things, generally speaking, very difficult, very challenging. It's like sort of literally banging your head against a brick wall constantly, yeah? And they forget that actually there's way more going on beneath from the throat down. There's way more available. All the resources, everything they're looking for is actually from the throat down. So being mind-centered is a very limited way of living, and it has its purposes. It's not a bad thing, but to sort of focus on it exclusively or to use it as your main way of living is a very poor option and stressful.
So if you're saying that we live either from the mind up, so that's like from the throat.
Yeah, sort of head-centered,
okay.
Yes, yeah.
And then from here down, that's more heart-centered.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
How can you tell the difference? I mean, give me an example. What's a mind-centered choice versus a heart-centered choice?
Okay, well, I guess I'll give you an example. I'll actually give you two examples.
Okay.
So one example is from my own experience. I would have been, I remember going away on a volunteer expedition with a group of people doing volunteer work abroad. And the leader of the group, who I didn't know, I took an immediate dislike to him. I was convinced that he didn't like me, yeah? Now,
that never happens to anyone.
Yeah, well, there you go. So I made this assumption, and I had no proof, I had no evidence, but I just, all of a sudden, this thought appeared in my head, and I chose to believe it. And so my behaviors, my decisions, my actions, everything I did followed on from that. So I kept my distance. I didn't engage with him. I basically tried to avoid him as much as possible. And every time I saw him, I felt annoyed. And I just thought, this guy is a jerk. Yeah, this is what I thought. And then luckily one day, I caught myself and I realized, hold on, what am I doing? Where's the evidence for this? And I reflected on what I had been doing and thinking, and I realized that all that had happened was I had felt, in one instant, I had felt that for some reason he didn't like me. I just felt that, right? I had no proof. So I judged me on the basis of him, and I projected all my judgment about myself onto him. I had convinced myself he didn't like me, when in actual fact, he had probably no opinion of me, none whatsoever. And all I had done was just shut him down. From a mind-centered perspective, I had decided I don't like him because I don't think he likes me. So once I could see that, I went back into that relationship from a heart-centered perspective, and I opened up. And I started to engage with him. I started to have conversation with him, and the whole relationship was an absolute pleasure to have. It was great fun. He turned out to be a nice guy, and we actually got on. And that was only because I let go of the mind, sort of the head stuff, thinking that I knew what he was thinking about me. It was mad, crazy. An even simpler example is I was working with a lady who was in a relationship, a new relationship, and she was crazy about this guy, But what was also driving her nuts was that this guy, he was sort of, one day he'd be all for the relationship and really happy to be in the relationship, and in another day, the next day maybe he'd be feeling, oh, I'm not sure if this is right, I don't know if I can commit. So he was going backwards and forwards, and this was driving her crazy. And she was getting really frustrated, and she was thinking, maybe I should drop him. And her girlfriends were saying, get rid of him. He's just messing you around. And so what I said to her was, first of all, what do you want? Do you want to stay in this relationship? Do you love this guy? She said, yes. So you want to be in this relationship. So at the moment, what she's trying to do is maintain the relationship from a head, from a mind-center perspective. She's trying to get him to behave himself, to change his behavior.
I'm sure none of you ladies watching know anything about that.
Yeah. Well, we all do it to some degree, I guess, yeah. And what she needed to do was to realize that this guy is just doing his stuff. He's doing the best he can, probably, but all she can do is be the best she can be. And if she goes back into that relationship from a heart perspective, sort of relax into the relationship, and if she feels the way she does about him, well, then allow herself to love him. Just love him. That's all she has to do. And whatever he does with that is up to him. She has no control over that. But she has absolute control over how she behaves, how she is being when she's in his company.
I think you're raising a really important point that when we're working on our minds, it's about control.
Yes.
Like, how do we control it? How do we maintain power in this situation?
Exactly.
And it sounds like in the heart, it's a little different.
Oh man, big time. You don't do control. You just trust. You let go.
That's going to be scary.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, but that's where the rewards are. That's where the treasure is. When you open up, when you let go, when you decide to trust yourself that you can cope no matter what happens, that people are going to be people. They're going to do what they're going to do, irrespective of what you think. But if you can be present, if you can show up and open your heart and be there as best you can be with that person, then whatever's going to happen is meant to happen. And you did the best you could. And that's all you can ever do, is the best you can. And you'll always do your best if you're in your heart. If you're in your head, like you say, you're trying to control, and that's actually quite damaging, and it's restrictive, it's limiting, it's too much coming from fear. Whereas from the heart, you're very much open, you're relaxed. It is love in action, and love is all about action. You know?
So let's talk about love in action. And when you're coming from the heart, give me an example. I mean, what does that look like?
Okay, so it can be something very simple, like sort of tuning into the person fully. So, you know, the ability to listen. Most people don't listen very well.
They hear what they want to hear.
Exactly.
Right.
And they're spending more time listening to what's going on in their head than to what the person is speaking to them about. So really, really listening to the person, actually changing your attitude in that moment and choosing to be interested. That's a big part of it. Letting go of our expectations of what we need. And I suppose lightening up, allowing ourselves to have fun, not being worried about what people think. That's a big part of it as well. The thing about being head-centered is or mind-centered is that you can either be worrying or be sort of stressing out, and it's not helpful. None of that works. Whereas when you're in your heart, you're not doing any of that. You're actually connected to what's happening right now. So you're very present. And that's the only way you can really engage with people.
You know, Owen, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about when we need to listen to people that we're in relationships with.
Yeah.
And sometimes we hear them say things that we don't want to hear them say.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
Well, I guess you note your own reaction. So you note how you're feeling, and you pay attention to that. It's very important to recognize, to let yourself feel what you're feeling. And in that feeling, there's information. So every feeling has something to tell us.
So there's more beyond the feeling.
Exactly. But we'll never know what that is if we don't feel it. So it's very important to give ourselves permission to really feel what we're feeling, and not to react to the feeling or even react from the feeling. So if we're feeling annoyed or frustrated or angry, for example, because we hear something we don't like, feel that feeling. And then on the back of feeling that feeling, respond in a way that honors both yourself as well as the person who's speaking. So it's not about trying to win. It's not about trying to control. It's not even about trying to make the person like you. It's about being as honest and as genuine as you can possibly be. And you can only do that if you're really, really listening to yourself in terms of your feelings, and then you speak from the heart. So if someone says something you don't like, you just acknowledge what you've heard, and maybe you might ask, tell me more about that. I want to know. I want to understand where that's coming from and what that's about. Help me see what you see here, because I don't get
I heard this tool once that has been useful for me in my own life, and it goes like this: when you say this or when you do this,
Yes.
I feel like
Yes.
this.
Yes.
It's just that kind of simple twist, but it's
Yes.
almost when you do this, I feel like that.
Exactly.
And I've used that a lot in my life, and it's helped in just deepening and sustaining, relationships, whether it's work, friendships,
Yeah.
romantic.
Yeah.
Are there other tools and language like that you use inside your own coaching practice?
There are, because yes, I mean, if you think about, say, something like, as you say, when you use you take ownership, you say because people will typically say, you make me feel.
Right.
Yeah, and no one can make
You
feel.
did this to me,
Yeah,
right?
No. With the language, which is a huge part of this, it's very important to be able to, I suppose, express yourself. So one of the tools is, and a very simple tool, is to use your breath. So to breathe right back into your body.
Yeah.
And to bring your attention and your focus to the heart space. So when we do that, we're tuning back into the essence of who we are, the truth of who we are.
How do we do that? How do you bring your breath into the heart space? I mean, it sounds easy, but how do you really do it?
Yeah. So some people may need to close their eyes when they do
Okay.
it, and especially if you haven't done it before or you're not used to doing it, just to get used to the change in state. So to close the eyes.
Okay.
And it may also help to actually put your hand over the heart space, which
Does
is
it matter
in the
if
middle
it's
of the
the right or
chest.
the left?
Doesn't matter, no.
Okay.
No. And then you just take a big, deep breath and imagine and visualize the breath going right down into the very pit of your stomach, going right down. And as your breath is going in, you're becoming more aware of your inside, the world inside, and you're tuning into what's happening in the chest, and maybe even in the stomach, in the solar plexus. So you're sort of scanning the inner you, right? And that helps you in that moment. In that instant, you're actually calming down. You're relaxing back into yourself, almost like you're stepping into a sort of a tight suit, but something that it's a perfect fit.
Right.
Yeah? And it's from that space, and only from that space, that you're able to sort of speak with any sort of genuineness. And if when you're feeling hurt or annoyed, you can come back expressing yourself from that space in a way that allows the person to hear you, without feeling that you're attacking them or without feeling that you're being defensive or reactive.
You raise a really interesting point, because I think when we're having a conversation we feel under attack, we hold our breath.
Yes.
It's like our natural response. We go,
Exactly.
What are they saying? Is this going to hurt me?
Yes.
And then we think about it and process it. We're still holding our breath.
Yeah.
And then we get that adrenaline going around it.
Absolutely.
And so you want to lash out.
Yeah, and it's that's so typical when we're in our heads, because we're disconnected, we're disembodied. So the only way we feel we can sort of defend ourselves is to attack and lash out. And when we're in our body, we have way more options. So but it's something that we need to be reminded of. I have a lovely story that I can tell you if you have a minute. Now, again, people may have heard this story. I presume it's true, but it's a lovely story nonetheless. There's a 6-year-old boy. Let's say his name is Todd, right? And for all of his life, his young life to date, he's had one of his best buddies was the family's Irish Wolfhound, big dog. And by the time Todd was 6, this dog had reached the end of his life and was very sick, and they were saying he needs to be put down. And the parents were thinking maybe Todd, it would be good for Todd to be there and witness the dog being put down, or put to sleep, to teach him about life and death and so on. And so what they did was they brought him along to witness the dog being put to sleep. And later on that night, they were sitting around the dinner table and they were talking about what Todd had experienced and what he got from it. And his mother speaks up and says, I wonder why it is that dogs have such a short lifespan compared to humans. And all of a sudden, Todd shouts up and he says, I know why. And they said, okay, why? Why, Todd? Well, because when you come into this life, people come into this life in order to learn how to be good people, in order to learn how to be nice to everyone and to love everyone. That's why we're here, he said. And dogs come into this life and they already know how to do that, so they don't need to hang around for as long. And you know, a 6-year-old, and that simplicity, and that absolute clarity in terms of what life's about. Life is all about love, you know, and not in any sort of cliche sense. It's purely, really about being able to appreciate what we have and love what's going on in our lives and the people we have. Everyone who's in our life is in our life to challenge us to love them, full stop. And it's our job, it's always our job, if not our only job in this life, is to love to the best of our ability, to remove the barriers that we have inside ourselves so that we can love even better. Rather than waiting for other people to love us, that's a mind game.
Is it possible, Owen, to love what's going on in our life, even if we don't like what's going on in our lives?
Absolutely, Kristen. You have to. You have to, because if you want to change your life, you first of all have to completely accept it.
Right.
So to love your life is actually acceptance. It's looking at what's happening right now and saying, you know what, I don't like it, but that's head stuff.
Right.
That's the mind stuff. And that's okay, I don't like it, but I accept it. So now that I accept it, I can reinvest.
Kind of settle into it.
Yeah, reinvest all that energy and say, so what are my options now? Let's see if I can do anything to change or address, or now that I've accepted what's happening, maybe there's other options I can. Whereas if I'm in my head and I'm saying I don't like this, I don't want it, you're going to lose that battle, because reality wins 100% of the time. You know, so it's crazy, but we do it to fight it. Acceptance is the key, and that's what the heart's all about. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your personal story.
Okay. Well, I've been coaching and coach training for the last 10 years, and speaking and writing as well. And I suppose personal development, since I was a 16-year-old, personal development has been a passion of mine, an absolute passion of mine. But I, for some reason, or maybe this is the case for everyone, I've spent my life learning the hard way, because I've always
Nobody ever does that, right?
Yeah. I've been using my head, you know, and thinking that was all I had. That everything was about using the head to the best of my ability. Not realizing that it's okay to be in my heart. It's okay to be vulnerable, and realizing there's a strength in that. So it took me a marriage breakup. It took me, you know, depression. It took me just acres and acres of drugs, sort of pharmaceuticals, just to try and cope. And and one day I realized, no, not just one day, but all through that, I realized that this is going nowhere. That the very thing I want is to be loved. The very thing I want is to be successful. The very thing I want is to be happy. And I thought, if I worked harder and smarter and tougher and longer hours, and I achieved more,
right,
I'd get that love.
One day you'd get there, right? Yeah.
So I'd be happy when. That's what I always used to think. And I realized, no, I've got it completely backwards. I need to, if I want to love, if I want success, I need to just love. I need to love the people who are in my life and actually live what I was teaching and talking about. So it only took 36 years.
You finally got there.
Yeah, that's all, 36. And it has been a nice journey since then. But those first 36 years that was a tough school. It's not that it's easy now, but it's a hell of a lot easier working with a whole body as opposed to just the head, you know? Yeah, man.
That's funny. It brings up one of those like Monty Python movies where it's just the head.
Yeah.
And then the body's over here.
Well, that was me. That was me. I was. There's a James Joyce book, I think, and it says, you know, Mr. Todd or whatever, or Mr. Murphy lived a short distance from his body. Right. And that was me.
Yeah, it's an interesting visual. You know, I was thinking about something as you were talking, that, you know, when we're going after something, you know, we're swimming towards it. It's like swimming towards that beach ball in the ocean.
Yeah.
And the harder you swim towards it, the more it just kind of bounces away. But if you just sit still, eventually the waves will just bring it right to you.
Yeah.
And it's hard, because we do think inside all of our, you know, culture and our training and our families, we have to work hard to be happy.
Yeah.
And what I hear you saying is that we just need to be happy by being in our heart.
Just by being in the heart. You think about a baby. A baby is born into the world, and what does it do? It nothing. Yeah? It's just a ball of love.
Right.
It wants to give its love, and it thrives on love. That hasn't changed for us just because now we can walk and talk. We're still the baby. We still have
We're
that
just
heart.
big babies.
Yeah. And we still have the very same needs in terms of that love and acceptance and affection, and we get it by giving it. And babies are natural givers. And what's really interesting is that when we start life off in the womb, the very first organ that starts off in the womb is the heart.
Right.
So we start life as a heart, and we just grow from that.
And we end life as a heart too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Starts and ends with the heart. And you know, it's crazy how we sort of lose touch with that so
And we
easily.
forget about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was listening to a talk once by Greg Braden, and he was talking about the magnetic resonance, like the energy, and which, is there more energy in the brain, or is there more energy in the heart? And actually, there was more magnetic pull from the heart, and that surprised me.
Yeah, the electrical impulse or the magnetic waves, they can be up to 60 times stronger in the heart than in the brain. I mean, the heart as a physical entity is incredibly powerful. What some scientists call the neural brain or the heart brain is sending more information to the brain than the brain is to the heart. So in actual fact, the brain is taking direction from the heart, physically and energetically speaking. And of course, the heart is an endocrine gland, so it's producing hormones. And when we're feeling love, when we're choosing, going back to the choice, when we're choosing to feel love for something or someone, when we're choosing to feel gratitude or appreciation, when we're choosing to feel just simply happy right now, just for now, just one moment.
Right.
We're actually getting these two in sync.
Yeah.
The head and the heart.
Connect.
They connect. We've now got coherence, and that means we're very focused, we're very present, and our performance shoots up. We have clarity, we have clear thinking. We are just on another planet, because we are tuned into ourselves, which allows us to impact others in a very powerful and positive way. And that's love in action. That is it.
You know, that's so empowering what you're talking about. And the question that I would have for you is, what would you say to someone who's watching and they feel like they've never felt any love in their life? How do you connect to your heart? How do you find the language of love when you don't feel like you've ever had any?
Okay. Well, there's a couple of things, but one thing I suppose would be to, in your own time, in your own place, what you can do is find a place that you feel at peace in. Could be a beach, could be a forest, could be your own bedroom or your own sitting room, doesn't matter. Somewhere where you can genuinely relax. And sit down there and close your eyes, and in your mind's eye, picture someone, and this could be like a dog or a cat, it doesn't have to be a person, yeah? Right. But someone that you love. Dead, or they may have passed on, so they could be dead or they could be still alive, it doesn't matter. But that you genuinely love. There's no question of that, and that's important. So there's a real love there. And when you do that, you picture that person and you see them standing in front of you. And then you breathe into your heart space, breathe into the chest, yeah? And you visualize yourself sending that love like a beam of light coming out of a lighthouse, like a beam of light coming from you, from the center of your chest to that person or that dog, doesn't matter. It's just you're using that to connect with your heart space. And as you do that, the more you do that, the stronger this feeling gets. And that's your heart opening up. It's like a flower opening up to the sunlight. That's what's happening. And anyone can do it. We're actually wired to be that way. So all the person is doing, even if they think they've never experienced love in their life, it's there. They have it. They just need to go in there and start doing that. Practice that. Practice doing that, and it actually starts to become quite comfortable and familiar. It may feel a bit alien at first,
right,
but it's worth it. Yeah, there's no better thing to do in life, and you're giving yourself that gift of love and joy, and it just frees you from the stress of head living, of mind-centered living.
Owen McCabe, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing what you love to do.
Yes.
Coaching others. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you, Kristen.